On this episode of Beanstalk Mum Podcast, we are diving into the world of financial well-being with the inspiring Jane Monica Jones. As a financial therapist, a co-founder of the Financial Wellbeing Co., and creator of the groundbreaking Capabilite platform, Jane combines emotional insight with practical strategies to help mums just like you take control of their finances and their futures. Money isn't just dollars and cents. It is deeply tied to our emotions, habits, and the sense of self. For single mums, financial challenges can feel especially daunting, but Jane's compassionate solution-focused approach makes financial empowerment achievable for everyone. And so, in this episode, we'll explore unique struggles faced by single mums, uncover the emotional triggers that impact financial decisions, and learn actionable tips to build a brighter financial future. Whether you're looking to set money goals for the new year or simply create more breathing room in your budget, Jane has a wealth of wisdom to share. So join us for a conversation filled with practical advice, empowering insights as we unlock the secrets of financial well-being. Are you ready to feel confident about your money? Let's get started. Welcome, Jane. It's so great to have you here today.
Thanks, Elle, for having me. It's really good to be here.
Amazing. I know that from our conversation before, you've mentioned that you do have a bit of a mixed bag of clients that you see, and some of them are single mums. So I'm really enthused to hear all your insights. But maybe let's just start with a little bit about you. You're a financial therapist and the creator of Capabilite platform. Can you share your journey and what inspired you to combine therapy with personal finance?
Yeah, so it's actually capability. That's how we couldn't get the Y at the end, so the .com, so we called it capability. So just to clear that up straight up. So yeah, what started me in this process? I think being really terrible at money made it happen for me. I did for many years was up and down, up and down. I would make a lot and then I would lose a lot, or I'd get very overwhelmed and then have to take out big slabs of time from work. So I was very up and down with my own income. And in that process, I suppose, of recovery or trying to restore a better balance, I did a lot of courses, lots of wealth creation courses, even went sort of the opposite way, went into non-attachment and spiritual kind of practices, and realized that there was something kind of missing in both streams. There was that kind of do I want to make a lot of money wasn't kind of really my way of being. So that wealth creation thing was, I didn't want to become really wealthy for no reason, or maybe without a purpose. And then the spiritualized thing was, well, that's not really paying my rent. So I needed to find a different middle ground. So what I did, I eventually retrained as a psychotherapist. And then I went, you know what, there's something about money. There's something really tricky and confusing and kind of slips through my fingers, and I'm keen to look at it. And so I focused my practice on financial therapy, looking at the challenges that we have with money. I find it a completely fascinating lens. It shows us who we are, not just our values, but also the essential part of our upbringing, our trauma history, our adversity, of course, our values. But it also is a really great lens to unpack some of our wounding and challenges. So yeah, it was me search first, finding out about researching me and finding out why I was challenged so much with money, because, of course I was intelligent, I had a level of intelligence, and yet this money thing really eluded me. So that's why I chose to become a financial therapist.
Wow. And, it's true. Many of us will explore, our journeys start with ourselves, really. And then we realize how passionate we are about a particular topic. And especially if you start making progress and see the change that it can bring in your life, it really inspires you to then help others to achieve the same change. And money can feel like such an emotional topic for so many of us, like you said, looking through that lens of our own conditioning. How do you approach helping people untangle their financial struggles from their feelings of self-worth and the trauma and everything else?
Yeah, so I work in a modality of somatic therapy. Somatic, or soma in Greek, means body. So I'm looking not only at our psychology, but I'm also looking at our nervous system. So what do we know what we know about that is it's that kind of fight, flight, freeze response that we often go through in our life. And because money is not just numbers, money at its most basic level is survival. And we often feel under threat around our relationship or our circumstances with money. When this body or nervous system feels under threat, it will go into fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah. So that's kind of the basics of what I'm looking for or working with people is where do we chronically go around feeling under threat around our money? Now, what's really interesting, I think chronically, a lot of people are frozen around money. My sort of scale, I suppose, is looking at us from survival to thriving. And if we're in that lower space or in that feel like I'm just surviving, then we would say that that nervous system or that person is just not thriving. And let's look at their nervous system. And probably what's happening in there is they're a little bit frozen. Yeah, they're a little bit stuck or frozen to act, to change, to move, to expand, and do whatever. What we know when we are stuck in states of freeze is we feel helpless and hopeless. The more that I've looked at this subject, the more I see that this helplessness and hopelessness has, or certainly hopeless, makes us feel unworthy. We feel the psychology of that is, I feel unworthy. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to change. Now, when we come out of feeling stuck and we come back to a sort of a more regulated state in our nervous system called rest and digest and repair, we feel more worthy. So nothing may have changed in our upbringing, our personality, or anything, yet when we feel regulated, when we've come back into rest, digest, and repair, we feel worthy. So that tells us that being stuck will make the psychology of us feel unworthy. Yet nothing has changed.
That's interesting. That's a very interesting way to pair the two together. And interesting findings that just the perception of whether you are fighting for your comfort and for your life or whether you're in that repair state seems to drastically
alter your worldview. Exactly. That's it. So the thing is, nothing may have changed, but when our nervous system is activated, when we're stuck in the physiology of fight, flight, or freeze, we often feel like there's something wrong. But if we're grounded, when we're embodied, when we feel safe, nothing is so wrong.
Well, if you bring this back to our audience of single mums, they face financial challenges in their own right, but often they come out of relationships that have been volatile or toxic. And even if they have not, it's still a disruption to their general happy well-being. So they naturally would be in that central nervous system, naturally would be in that flight or fight.
Right, or freeze. Exactly.
And so there would be some common blocks, I suppose, that would come up for these women. Where would you start to overcome these? Because obviously, I'd never thought of it this way, as in, that the external world would affect how you deal with money. I always sort of thought, well, if you've been brought up a particular way, in abundance mindset or if in a scarcity mindset, then you kind of kept that on as a genetical imprint from your parents. But you're actually saying that it's the external world and the current situation that affects you as well. So how would you address that and how would you get past those blocks?
Yeah, so we need care, we need repair. Most of that happens in some sort of therapeutic environment, whether we work with our counselors, whether we work with a psychotherapist of any variety, or a somatic practitioner, someone that works, with body and trauma. That's how we do it. We can't often, there's something that is built so much in the relational field when someone else sees ourselves suffering that it repairs fundamentally. It's sometimes we just can't do it alone. The problem that we often have set up is that when, depending on our childhoods, there was no one there for me. Maybe mum and dad were present at some level, but maybe they weren't, or that they weren't in a way that was really attuned to my needs. You may have had the greatest parents in the world, but they may have lacked that deep level of attunement. And that means that we may not feel that there's anyone truly there for us. So we get this hyper individualized, self-sufficient setting in our structure. And that says to us that there's no help for me and there's no support for me and there's nothing that supports me. So then we become that hyper set person that finds it very difficult to support, ask for support. But what we do know before that is that we're actually mammalian and we survive when we have a community of support around us. And so, this individualized approach that we have in the modern world is really not that supportive for individuals. And what makes a healthy child is a happy mother, point blank. A healthy child only comes from when the mother is happy. If the mother is not happy, the child's mental health is starting to be affected. And so we need to, as single mothers, people struggling alone, we need to seek support. There's nothing wrong with having support. In fact, it's only been in the last 50 years where we are these single family structures. Even, two parents is a rare thing prior to to hundreds and hundreds of years. So even a single mother is even rarer still. And it's not the natural way to rear children. Now, I'm not saying that we have to be in partnership, but we certainly need a lot of support. And that support is if you want to thrive in life, you need a lot of support. And that's what I say to my clients. Support, support, support if you want to thrive.
You make some really great points there, and I sort of wonder whether it's our generation, and yes, our parents were beautiful and wonderful, but the conversation around mental health or around your struggles, it wasn't as open as it is today. Like, I know I talk to my child completely differently to the way my mum spoke to me, and we unearth topics and things are okay to discuss. Whereas when I was growing up, many of my friends, you just didn't talk to your parents. So they loved you, they provided for you, they gave you everything you needed. But almost those sort of conversations, deep, normalizing, asking for support, like you say, it just wasn't there. And hopefully our generation, our kids' generation will not have that struggle. But I'm really glad to hear that you sort of bring that up, that it's not necessary in partnerships. Like, you don't need just because you're separated doesn't mean that, you cannot seek that support in different places, that it's quite all right to seek support from a counselor or from a, financial therapist or your minister or whoever it may be. That reaching out to somebody else needs to be normalized.
It's really interesting when you saying that word, reaching out. That's one of the big things that gets shut down very early. So all those moments that we used to reach out to mom or dad or the caregiver to, hey, I need help, that impulse. If you see what I was doing right now, I'm putting my hands up as though I'm reaching as a little kid. That impulse gets shut down very quickly, because every time we get it, we would reach out and mum and dad or the caregiver was too busy or tired or whatever they were. And then we eventually stop that reaching out impulse, that reaching out, I need help, I need care, someone pick me up, I need soothing. So it gets shut down very early, that impulse to ask for help. And often that's what, not even financial therapists, but any sort of psychotherapeutic field is about, saying, how can you come out from that really frozen, lost voice, shut down place and come back and ask for help? Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And at a fundamental level, that's what, if you look at any person that's made a lot of money or run a successful business, they have a whole lot of support. It doesn't matter that whether you're not doing a big enterprise or not running some sort of big community group, everyone deserves support. And support with children is the biggest thing that we should be throwing all our resources at, because it sets up the next generation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I cannot underscore that more. It makes me wonder, because we as single mums and mums in general, often taking it back to that financial side of things, we struggle. We have this massive guilt around money and spending it on ourselves to potentially get counseling or potentially get some assistance and to reach out for that help. It's almost like a circle. We know we need to, or we're trying to encourage that connection and that reaching out, but then potentially, unless it comes from reaching out to your family or friends, but if you actually want to reach out for some professional assistance, that it usually has costs involved. And then that is impacted on how open you are to spend that money, because there is the guilt. But at the end of the day, we truly need to get past all that, because that generation that we're bringing up now, that needs to be normalized with them, that it is okay to spend on yourself, that it is okay to ask for help, that it is okay to put into your mental health and well-being, because that's how we fundamentally end up helping everybody else.
Yeah. Look, I think the challenges that we often have now is that we have that, again, lots of spending. We overspend and we think that kids need a lot, but actually they don't need that much. They just need an unstressed mother and a supported mother, and that's all they need. They don't need all the trappings of technology and the latest everything. They don't need that. They need that attunement from mother. They need that stress-free mother. So it's the guilt that we think, like, my kid doesn't have anything. You know what? We have to just focus. A mother needs to focus completely on herself. If she's happier, then the child will be happier. The child is unhappy because she's unhappy. That's how it works. We are wired, the little kids are wired to monitor the parents and their emotional experience. And they do that. They're actually wired. There's a thing called in our brain called the mirror neurons that mirror what's happening. If I see mum sad, I'm going to mirror that effect inside of me so I can understand how she's feeling. Now, if the reason why we have these mirror neurons is so that we can go, right, she's feeling sad. I need to adjust myself so I don't overwhelm her. So I start pulling down my needs as a way not to overload mum, because if she falls over, then I fall over. So we as parents need to focus on our needs first, not the child's. In a way, I mean, of course, you're fitting. I'm not saying that you're not looking after their basic needs, but our emotional needs, our housing needs, our welfare as parents needs to be sorted first and have stability. Then the child's needs can be fulfilled. That's the basis.
And I suppose that's where there's been a big shift recently in the slogans, put your mask on first, look after your own well, fill your own cup and all that, which are probably overused by many coaches and therapists now, and that's everywhere, and it kind of potentially gets on people's nerves. But it is so extremely important, isn't it? You cannot give. If you're overwhelmed and if you are stressed and in that negative spiral, you cannot build up anything or anyone.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And yeah, the best way to kind of reframe it is that as I give to myself, then I'm giving to my child. That's the easiest thing we can do for ourselves, is actually to be, because essentially if we fall over, then we've got real challenges for our kids. So
Absolutely. And I suppose taking it back to the capability platform that you've created, what's one simple stress-free tip from that platform that our listeners could start doing today to feel more like that, that support that they get for themselves, so they can be a bit more in control of their money, they can be a bit more in control of their own faiths and set a good example for their children?
Yeah, look, there's around 100 courses in there, all of various
Wow.
types, budgeting and, saving and debt repayment and all that. But we have a lot of psychotherapeutic courses in there as well. And
Hmm.
one of them is my favorite, which I actually have taught, and it's actually an audio course, and it's called Financial Saboteur. So financial saboteur, or sabotaging behavior, is something that I'm sure a lot of us do, that we had set out on a goal, and for some reason we end up sabotaging ourselves. And this course is really powerful in being able to understand those foundational pieces that stop us actually achieving or empowering ourselves. Yeah. So what is the underlying piece to our sabotaging behavior? It is an inability to be empowered. We seek empowerment, we seek to change, we seek to start saving, or we seek to pay down debt, and we then sabotage ourselves. So we're sabotaging our empowerment. So what I do going through the course is, one of the elements of this course, I think it's, partway through, is we look at how do you seek change as an individual. When you want to start changing, let's say you want to start saving, you go, you know what, I bring in too much change. I'm going to save all of my pay packet. And then that becomes too unattainable. You become too restrictive. You've got all the savings set over there, but you're giving away, you're not having enough money for a little bit of play or a little bit of joy or whatever, and life becomes too restrictive. So then you sabotage it. You go in there and take all the money back out. Or you do something opposite when you're changing, trying to bring in empowerment. You don't change enough. You only save $10 a week rather than, say, $100. So then you're not significantly changing. So it's through this course, we look at how we can become more empowered by looking at the way that we sabotage ourselves and our goals. And it's a really very powerful. When I started to develop it, I really worked through all the steps of the courses to look at, how do I sabotage my own level of empowerment and confidence? So I suggest people go and check that one out.
That sounds brilliant. When I wear my other hat as a single mum away counselor, that is the biggest thing that I tackle with, that setting small, achievable goals, nothing too small and insignificant, but nothing too crazy huge either, because we tend to go, right. And this episode is going to air in January. So I know we're recording it now, but it will come up in January. So it's going to be very much along the lines of those fresh new year, fresh new goals. And what people tend to do is go, right, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to change the way I eat. I'm going to change the way I sleep. I'm going to be this super duper. I'm going to put all my money away, like you said, and then come the end of January, we go, oh my God, that's exhausting. And we give it up. Whereas just breaking it into smaller, more achievable goals and spreading it out. The year flies by so quickly. So if we just put one small achievable goal for 1 month and then slowly, incrementally build this up over the year, it's amazing how far you can come without sabotaging yourself and
Yeah.
actually achieve those goals. So I really resonate with that course, and I might have to have a bit of a look at it myself, because I know that financially I'm good at giving advice, but often we are very hard at taking our own. And when it comes to self-care, I'm great, but money-wise, I'm probably one of those that goes, right, I'm putting everything away.
Yeah, that's right. And then 2 weeks down, you've blown it, and then you give yourself a hard time. So yeah, the right steps, not just the right amount of steps, not too much, not too little.
Absolutely. And so I have had a quick look in the capability platform, and there is, as you mentioned, so many different courses. And I love that there is a whole section on mindset, which just ties everything you're saying together so beautifully. And that they're very accessible and they appear very easy to follow. And I wonder, could you give us a sneak peek into one of the lessons or tools that has had the biggest impact on your students, besides the self-sabotage one you've just mentioned?
Yeah, so there is a mindfulness course on there as well, money mindfulness, as well as there's plenty of meditations in there and looking at stress relief. So money mindfulness is a really interesting course. it kind of is broken down in 5 stages. We look at money and courage, money and support, those issues around what stops us from seeking support, money and how we feel challenged. Looking often, there's often approach, and I don't know whether it's come from the positive psychology movement, which I have some reservations around, because it's often when we can meet and overcome our adversities that we have the greatest amount of change, rather than having a total positive outlook. So the Money Mindfulness course is looking at some of those gifts in our challenges, essentially, like what are the issues of empowerment? What is the issues of stopping me from being courageous? What are the issues that are stopping me from asking for support and guidance? What is the issues of facing joy in my life, whatever it is? So it's deeper work. Capability is not just financial literacy, it is financial capability. And financial capability is that I have the knowledge, but I feel capable to implement the change that I see in my life. And that's the real difference. And I certainly why we created capability in the way it is that, we might know how to do something. We know we should budget, but do we do it? No, we don't. And that's what I'm curious about as a financial therapist. I want to find out what's happening in you that feels unempowered or not confident or is unable to take that measured risk to achieve your financial goals. And so I think my definition for financial well-being is financial literacy plus financial capability, meaning I feel capable to implement all that I know. And that truly is the equation for financial well-being. The money mindfulness is getting into the nitty-gritty and doing a little bit of self-work on what is the barriers that I face in order to achieve what I want to achieve.
I love that you say, that financial literacy, and that's not enough. Yes, we can be financially literate, but if there are psychological or mental health or internal blockages that are stopping us, then we're not capable. So I like how you make that distinguishing point between the being financially literate and capable. You do work through your financial well-being company, you focus on building financial capability there. So how is the capability platform different to working with you in financial well-being company?
So my financial wellbeing company is so capability is one of our products. Mm-hmm. So I'm the director of that company, offer employee benefits. So, you could approach your employer and say, get in contact with financial wellbeing company and get them to pay for capability, or trainings. We do coach as well, money coaching through that organization as well as sessions for corporates for their staff to have some understanding around whether it's financial literacy or financial capability. So that's what Financial Wellbeing Code does. But capability it's a user product. It's about having an individual have access to this content that is different. For a long time, we've thought, you just got to get people financially literate. And financial literacy is understanding savings accounts, understanding in things like compound interest, understanding what investments do, understanding how to pay down debt. Now, that's all really, really, really valuable information. But if you feel incapable to do that for whatever reason, meaning that you're not earning enough, you're not managing enough, you're doing a bit of financial avoidance, you're feeling a bit chaotic, you're paycheck to paycheck, or can't see yourself in the future, which is often a problem, particularly if we've experienced some sort of rupture, is that we're still stuck in the wounding of our separation or the wounding of partner dying or even the shock of being where we're at in life. We can't often see ourselves in the future. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of psychologically based programs or courses inside of capability to support deep growth, deep change than just knowledge, because knowledge, as we know, you should eat right and you don't. You should budget and you don't. We overspend constantly. Well, let's look at why. What's set up in you that's making you overspend, not taking measured risk, what that is. And that is the psychology, that is behavior change. And that's why we created capability with all its content in its way.
Fantastic. So for listeners wanting to take the first step to that financial empowerment, obviously I'm hearing first approach your boss, if possible, to work with Financial Wellbeing Co. And then if that is not an option, explore financial capability through the capability platform.
Yeah, look, I mean, let me tell you, the sales cycle for signing on employee is long. I would say don't wait. I'm sure you've got the link for people to get access to it now.
Yes.
Yeah, of course, encourage your employer to maybe get in contact with us that we can do some supportive stuff with that. But, we know that sales cycle takes a little bit to get that embedded into organizations. And I would say don't wait. The other thing I wanted to, and this is going to be a complete surprise for you, is that actually I want to give away 3 packages for people to come and work with me.
Oh, amazing.
Next year in 2025. Now, those packages look like 4.5 hours with me, which is 4 sessions doing financial therapy. So anyone that signs up to Capability through Elle's link that she gives you, I'm going to draw out 3 people that will come and work with me for free. So I totally encourage you to sign up through the Capability system, through the link that Elle gives you, and you go into the draw to come and work with me. So 3 lucky people are going to come and work with me in 2025.
Jane, thank you. That's amazing. That's so very generous of you. And I'm really, really grateful. I'm starting to tear up here because this is so wonderful for our mums. Being part of the Single Mama Vine and having access to these conversations inside the Vine, I see how mums struggle financially, and a lot of it is based on that central nervous system issues that you've mentioned right at the beginning. They're in that grieving state. They're in that flight and fright and fight and flee and all the F's, and it's just to be able to provide them with an opportunity to shift out of that is amazing. And what I will do is I will include a link, obviously, to Capability platform in the show notes, and we will air this episode on the 10th of January. So what you're saying is anyone after the 10th of January that signs up via the link in the show notes will have an opportunity to get some one-on-one time with you.
Yeah, so that's 3 people will get a financial therapy package with me. Plus, I was also going to throw in, I have some really fabulous resources. So I've got the Financial Wellbeing Diary, which is a diary that can be used as a diary, but also has fabulous tips and tricks for getting your financial wellbeing set for a year, plus money bubbles. So 10 people. So 3 people are going to win that, and 10 people are going to win my financial wellbeing books and cards as well. So I'm going to throw that in for another 10 people. So 13 people are going to set up their year very well.
That is amazing. Thank you so very much. And that is a bit of a surprise. I didn't know you were going to do that. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm a bit speechless now. It's, building financial stability and creating financial plans and budgeting and all that can feel quite isolating. And especially if you are just learning and you may have the knowledge around and the understanding around financial, that, the intelligence around it, but you don't have your mental health sorted around it. It does take a lot longer. And then, of course, if we try it and it's not working the first time, or for the first couple of times we try, and we become discouraged. So to have someone like yourself on board to support and guide, is, whether with resources or your time, is extremely valuable. And for that, I am grateful. With our listeners being mums, can you give us an idea or suggestions on how they can engage their children in starting financial capability really early and changing this generational cycle of how we perceive money?
Yeah, well, interestingly, on Capability, there's 5 courses on how to teach children about money. I'm looking at it now, teaching children about money. That's one course. How to teach children financial boundaries. Now, that's a good one to get for your kids, is to say that, we have limitations, and certainly, some of us have budgets, and it's important to start instilling that we can live within our limitations. So how to teach children about financial boundaries. The next one is how to teach children about money and how to model good financial habits for your children. An important thing, because of course what we often see, what we've picked up from our parents is what we end up doing ourselves.
It's do as I do, not as I say.
Exactly. And then another one, how to teach your children to prioritize needs over wants. So there's courses on there already about how to teach children to have the best start in life around finances.
Amazing. Is there anything on that platform that's not there?
No, but I'll get to it if it's not. There's also there's a site on the sidebar. There's a list of subcategories, and there's one, financial wellbeing barriers. So looking at if you've got problems with gambling, there's a course around trauma and finances, looking at our trauma, particularly when we've had a really difficult divorce or separation or a loss of a partner or even just early childhood stuff. Trauma does impact our finances. It just does. It impacts the level of stress, I suppose, that we manage and the behaviors that we do and get triggered by. So looking at that's a really fascinating and healing approach. As well as in that section 2 under financial wellbeing barriers is what is financial abuse. So it's very comprehensive. There's a topic, and there's, different stages and ages and things for every day, things for someday, and things for depending on what stage of life we're at. So it's pretty comprehensive. And as I said before, there's lots of meditations and plenty of places to get help as well. So we've got lots of resources in if you need help.
Being such a robust platform, when I heard about it, I thought this is going to be so expensive, but it's not. It's actually quite financially achievable for single mums. So I strongly encourage our listeners to go and check it out. I think I might even sign up myself and see if I can improve my financials. There's one thing to be, to get over the trauma and the grieving of your relationship not working out. But then part of building the rest of your life up is improving that financial side too. And like we've mentioned already, we can feel quite hopeless around that area. So it sounds like this platform has got every single thing that we possibly could need to build ourselves back up again and to set up a much better life for us and our children. In your journey as a financial therapist, would you have an inspiring story from your work that shows how financial well-being can truly transform lives?
Yeah, look, I've got so many. I mean, the process can often be that as soon as people reach out, that there can be this dramatic shift because they've actually overcome that seeking support process. But gosh, I've been trying to think of a response, and probably one of them would be, and it's a big topic at the moment, which is about being scammed and how painful that can be. And I've had about 7 people that have been scammed, and significant amount from 20,000 up to almost 1 million. And how painful it is on so many levels, not only being duped and the pain around that and the shame around that, but also having to deal with all the authorities and the banks and going through that whole kind of administration and often systemic trauma that happens when the banks doesn't believe you or whatever that may end up being. It can be highly stressful for individuals. I can't divulge completely,
No, of course.
bit for confidentiality reasons, but this one individual had almost $500,000 taken from them, and then they ended up having to take on their bank as well. And through that process, they had really repaired something around their childhood, being that their father believed that they weren't going to end up being very much. And that came out in the therapeutic process, that this memory about their father just going, you're just absolutely you're not too bright, you're not going to end up you won't be able to achieve anything. And so they had really carried that kind of narrative within them for many, many years. But through this process, they started to realize that they ended up taking on a bank and winning. And that is no mean feat when you're an individual and they're a structure that is very powerful with a lot more resources. And the bank saw they were at fault and admitted it. And they paid out everything of the funds back to the individual.
That's brilliant.
It made this person, they thought, they came to me originally and said, look, they'd had a lot of trauma in their life and didn't want to have this moment define the rest of their life. So they really wanted to heal it. And as we finished up, the expression that they said to me, which I've just totally resonates, they said they'd had lots of health issues in their life. And they said through all the cancer that I had gone through, this thing was far more painful and difficult than any of my cancer treatments. And they had got through it and they mastered it and got all the money back. So it was not until, I held their hand through the process, through taking me on the bank, all that sort of stuff. And it was victorious. And they have now feel that they are a new person because of this experience of being scammed and recovering. Amazing. And it just, scams are on the rise. There is a formula. There's a formula to the scam, but there's also a formula to why people get scammed. And that's something that I really support people with and have a very good understanding, which has been able to then help in that recovery. And it usually has to do with something that's been laid down a long time ago, way before the scam happened. And so it's amazing to have clients. Some people don't get it back, but some people do. But most of them have grown deeply from having done the work around this deeply traumatic experience around being scammed.
What an emotionally empowering story. I love that. How lucky, wonderful that they stumbled upon you and you were able to support them through it. But it's interesting also too that there is the trauma that we hold on to from our childhood potentially that predisposes us to being more susceptible to being scammed, and potentially stepping in and either working with yourself or working through the capability platform and empowering ourselves can, in a way, safeguard us from making decisions or making judgment calls by building up that knowledge and by getting over some of those traumas and getting over the things that hound us still from the past.
Yeah.
That is absolutely and definitely a transformation right there. That's very amazing. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just wondering, if our listeners were to take away just one message from today's conversation, what would you want it to be?
I think it is that everything is changeable. We can change our life. Even the most adverse or traumatic childhoods can be movable. We know from our nervous system that it's very plastic. It can change. It can become more regulated. We know that our brain can be the same. It's very plastic. It can change. It can be fine-tuned. There is always hope. And if you feel that there is no hope for you, get support. Where we started in this conversation, reach out, get some help. There's nothing wrong with us. We thrive in community. We thrive when there is support. We thrive when there is guidance, and we're wired to be helped and helping. So that is it. Get support, get as much of it, and then you'll start seeing yourself thrive.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much for your time today. I really appreciated it, and it's been so insightful. I'm really ready, and I hope many of the mums that are listening are ready to grab this new year by the horns, so to speak, and in small incremental bites take on their financial capability and thrive, make 2005 the thriving year that they've been wanting for such a long time.
And thank you for having me, Elle. It's been so good to be here on Beanstalk Mums.
You're very welcome. Thank you for joining us today for another uplifting and guiding chat with one of our guests. For all the links mentioned in this episode, please see the show notes or visit the full episode write-up on beanstalkmums.com.au. If you enjoy this podcast, please follow us and leave us up to a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple. That's a terrific way to support us, absolutely cost-free. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for upcoming guests or topics that you'd like us to cover on the next episode, please leave us a comment here or head over to our webpage, beanstalkmums.com.au/topics/podcast, and leave us a voicemail there on a very cute little widget. If you are not already following us on social media, we are Beanstalk Mums on all platforms like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok and Pinterest. And on all of those platforms, we explore the ups and downs of being a single mum in today's world. We uplift and support you on your journey, providing you with a community of your own through the Single Mum Vine on Facebook. And of course, our website holds an extensive library of articles written by single mums for single mums on topics that make our life happier, easier and healthier. If you haven't yet subscribed to our Beanstalk newsletter, that's a great free way of connecting with us fortnightly. The newsletter includes podcast summaries, newest articles published that month, spotlights on specific businesses that we have vetted just for you, as well as little PDF gifts from worksheets, checklists, planners, journals, and any other tools that may help you to thrive in this single mum life. So just follow the link in the show notes to sign up. Thank you once again for joining me for this episode, and I look forward to chatting to you and bringing you our next guest the following month. Take care.